Hello, everybody. Welcome Tuesday training. Tuesday training for practitioners. I'm so glad to have you all here. Welcome, welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome, Anna. Welcome, Lori. Welcome, Valerie. It's so good to see you guys. Hello. Okay, we got all the buttons clicked. Awesome. Welcome. Welcome to Tuesday training. We're going to be here for an hour. We're going to talk We're going to talk about that final case study. This should be the last, this should be the last conversation we have on the same case study, but I have been enjoying digging into the details with you all. So thank you for being here and coming back. If you are watching on the replay well, if you're watching on the replay, hi, doesn't mean you've been here for the first time, but if you are here for the first time, welcome. We're going to talk shop for an hour. So this Tuesday training hour is for all movement and manual practitioners to talk shop. Anatomy, physiology, functional anatomy, case studies, orthopedic work, therapeutic work, all the good things. And I am your host, Gina Schatz. I have been both a manual and movement practitioner for many moons. I've been in the industry now full-time for 30 years. And along the way, I developed the Schatz method. And so one of the things I love to do is to do the Schatz method on clients and solve their problems, and then teach practitioners how to do the same thing. So sometimes in our conversations here on Tuesdays for Tuesday training, we do talk a little bit of shop, and it does sound a little Schatz method-esque. So this, I think, is going to be one of those days. So I'm kind of excited to see what all rolls out. And in a true Schatz method teaching format, I never give the answers. I do eventually get you to the answer, but strategic thinking is the name of the game. And here's why. Just remind us all, why do we strain like that between our ears? Because every client, I believe, if you're working to resolve pain, every client case study is a puzzle. It is a pop quiz. So what I would love for all of us to possess is the confidence to stand in front of our clients and know that we can sort out whatever they're presenting with and get them back to a pain-free lifestyle, which means we get to know our anatomy, we get to understand what they're telling us, we get to troubleshoot what that means functionally, and then we get to have tools to return them back to alignment where there will be no pain, alignment and optimal function. And so that's what we do here in this space. And the deep dive in the year-long program is definitely deep and divey, but super fun. So for those of you who are here from the mastery track right now, you know I'm going to be especially questiony to you instead of answering to you, because it's part of the game. It's part of the game. So, and it gets to be fun. And we do have fun here on Tuesday. So I'm so glad that you guys are here. We are going to walk through the case study that we've been working on the last few weeks. If you're watching this video, this training for the first time, you might want to go back and watch last week or the week prior, because it all really builds on itself so that you'll understand, like, how did we get to this answer? And if you are one of those practitioners that's like, no, I don't need to do all that, just get me the answer. That's not what how we're gonna get there today. So you may still want to go back and watch the replays. And truly, the reason is just so you can develop that strategic thinking. It's one of the most important, if not the most important skills we have in our toolbox, is to be able to strategically think, because pain doesn't have a pattern necessarily. So there's no checkbox to get us through to the answer. We really have to be able to rely on ourselves to do that. So please do enjoy that ride. And as always, if you have any questions and you're watching on the replay, put them in the comment section below. I always answer them. Some of you guys email me directly, which I also love because I love the personal connection. Either way that you're comfortable with. I like the comment section because it allows everybody to be part of the conversation, but I understand the feeling of like, I don't really want to put this question out there and look like I don't know what I'm talking about. That's fine. If you want to email directly, you can do that too. But it's a safe space here. So as we dig in today, just know that any guesses, if you don't have concrete answers, are perfect, right? Because what I don't do when I'm teaching is shame people. So I will get you to the answer. I just might not get there as quickly as you might want them, but we will get there. Okay. So walking it through really helps. Okay. So with that, who here who's on camera? I guess a couple people aren't on camera. That's okay. Who here, and if you're not on camera today, I should always just say this. If you're not on camera, you don't have to be. If you can't come off mute, you can always use the chat. I do prefer to hear your voice though, because it just helps me be a little more streamlined, but definitely contribute to the conversation so that I can pour into you and you can get something from your time here today. So for those of you who are here, whether you're on camera or not, who would like to give us a recap of where we are in this particular case study? Because I left you guys with some homework last week, which was a first for Tuesday training. Who would like to give us a recap? Like, where are we? What are we talking about? And what was the homework? Don't necessarily give me the answers yet, but do you want to just get us up to speed for anybody tuning in for the first time?
Oh, Lori.
Hi, you go.
Anna,
Anna, you start it off and I'll fill in what we'll both kind of support each other. How about that?
Good plan.
Okay.
All right. So we've got a guy who's at the gym who is doing squats. He loves to do squats. And in order to actually build more strength, he's got, I think it was a 20-pound weight. He's got some kind of weight, like a backpack sort of weight. And he pretty much fairly quick, I don't know how many days he'd been doing this, but he started to experience some pain in his lower back. And then the day after, I believe his hamstrings were like, okay, we're having none of this, really, really painful. And that was when he came to see you, and he was convinced that it was hamstrings. But what did happen in the gym, which was a big clue, is he asked his buddy if he was doing this okay. And his buddy, who doesn't know anything about, proper alignment, but could see that his lumbar curve was actually curved. There was a flexion in the lumbar curve while he was doing squats. So that's, if I recall, that's how he presented to you. And so our work was, why were his hamstrings killing him? Why was he really, really feeling it in the hamstrings? So where we got to, and I did little diagrams.
Wow, Anna, fancy.
Was okay. So what allows us to do squats? So we know it's mainly the psoas that allows that hip flexion.
Yeah. Just before you get into the mechanics, though, let's just make sure we have everything we need to solve this puzzle. Can you pause there for just a second, Anna, and be comfortable with that? Okay, Lori, is there anything else thanks. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the intake part?
No, Anna got it. He came to Eugene and he's like, I got a hamstring pull. He was sure that he pulled his hamstring.
Yeah.
He's hypermobile. I don't know if you said that, Anna. Yep, during squats, he had some mild lower back. He felt something, right? He was like, something's going on. He checked with his buddy, like you said, Anna. His buddy's like, something, I don't know what it is, but it looks like it's off. So then what I have is the next day, he experienced the pull in his, I have right hamstring pain for 10 days. Does that make, do you remember that, Jean? Did you throw that in there? I wrote that down. And that's where we're at.
Yeah.
That was the extra.
Yep. And there were a couple details there that are really important. I want you guys to hear, because everything your client tells you is important. Okay. And then we get to ask ourselves, what does that mean? What does that mean functionally? What does that mean dysfunctionally? What does that mean as far as what the body needs? What is the body asking for? So every time they tell you something, it's relevant. And then our training should take us to, what do I do about that? What does that mean? So what? Right? So he just said this thing, so what? Nothing is superfluous. And so here's the keys. In order also matter. While he was working out, he did not have hamstring pain. While he was working out, though, he did get a twinge in his low back. Something in his low back is the word that he used, right? And that's when he asked his friend to spot him. So it wasn't that it was a nothing and then suddenly hamstring. His body told him in the moment, this isn't working. Okay. And so our question then is, what's not working? What's the body saying? What does that something in the low back in this activity mean? And I think that's where you were starting to go, and we'll come back to that. Then the next day, he thought he had pulled a hamstring, but couldn't figure out why, because he was only doing squats. Why or how? He's only doing squats and thought, oh, it's going to go away. But after 10 days, it didn't, and then started to present as legitimate back pain. So he thought his hamstring pull was creating low back pain.
That's right. I do have
that.
Also.
Yeah, and that order of things matters because, hi, Rhonda, nice to see you. That order of things matters and the timing of it matters because, again, the question is, so what does that mean? So before we get into what your notes were, Anna, what does that mean? What's the distinction? Why am I drawing such a hard line here that there was a twinge in the low back at the gym, then it turned into a hamstring pull that the client self-diagnosed, and then it moved into his low back? How and why? What does it mean? What is the implication of it? How does one go from one place to another? Why does it happen over time? Do you have answers for any of that before we get into what do you do about it? But the answers to those questions will help you with what do you do about it, which is why I want us to pause here. So let's do the first one first. What does the sensation in the low back during squats mean?
Yeah, it means that he didn't have proper alignment in his lower back while he was doing the work, and muscles kicked in to do work that's not their main job to do. Okay. And so those muscles, while they're eager to help, it's not their main job.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, because he had this misalignment in his lumbar curve, plus he had this weight.
Yeah, the weight bearing.
The weight's big. Yeah. So
great. Anything else? What does the something in the low back during squats mean? Anybody else have anything to add?
Well, that his body, it's kind of like, it reminds me of like the little flag going up, like, ooh, something's happening here, like pause and look at me. But it wasn't loud enough to get his full attention, but it was loud enough that, you know what I mean? The hamstring was super loud to get his attention, but his lower back was like, I'll just let it.
Yeah, absolutely, Lori. We're going to come back to that, the subtlety of it. Rhonda, what does your note say? Which muscles are you referring to here? Do you want to come off mic and share? Both muscles pull in opposite directions. Which muscles are you talking about?
So I came in late. So from what I could hear, low back muscles and hamstrings. And so they both attach to the back of the pelvis and pull in opposite directions.
Okay. Yeah. In this particular case study, this young chap was doing squats with a 20-pound weight pack on his back. And in the middle of the squats, he got a something in his low back, but it kind of came and went. And then the next day had extreme hamstring pain that he described as a hamstring pull that then 10 days later turned into low back pain.
I still have the same answer.
Okay, so the something in the low back while he was doing squats, what does that mean? What's the body saying?
So as I think it was Anna was saying, the alignment was off, and so the weight transmission through the body was off, which strained muscles, and they eventually were trying to rebalance, and they were pulling oppositely back and forth on the pelvis.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So general rule, like a law of the body, when the body is moving in alignment and it's functioning in alignment, there's no pain. It's functioning optimally and functioning in alignment, there's no pain. So while we're in alignment and while we're in function, if the body says, oh, hey, something either in alignment or function or both is off. So that's like a high level answer, not even specific to this guy. It's sort of like universal law of the body. If you move in alignment and you move optimally, there's no pain. So something was either not optimal in his movement or in his alignment or both. Got it. And he sensed it, right? So while it was a subtle little something in his low back and it came and went quickly, it wasn't loud and screaming. It was not nails on a chalkboard. It wasn't, halting him, dropping him to his knees. It was nothing dramatic. It was enough to catch his attention because he remembers asking his friend in that moment. And Lori, you brought that up about the subtlety of it. That's key. We all do that, by the way, not just our clients. We ignore signs and symptoms and subtleties when the body is communicating. By the time the body starts screaming, like, running like your hair is burning off your head, there's a problem. And it's probably been there for a while. Unless it's, high velocity, high impact, like smacking into a tree while you're skiing or something, obviously. But even in those instances, adrenaline would kick in and you wouldn't feel anything for a minute. It's the body gives you this buffer so that you don't have to take it all in all at the same time. It would be overwhelming for your nervous system to do that. So the subtlety in his low back was the key. It was a key for a lot of things. In this moment, what you're doing now doesn't work. And in this moment, what you're doing right now is causing a problem for the low back. But because it came and went, and then later the hamstrings started roaring, he thought it was hamstrings. And we talked about this last week and the week before. I will repeat it again because it's a really good stat. 80 to 90% of the musculoskeletal pain in the body is referred from somewhere else, which means there's only a 10, maybe 20% chance that there's something really going on in that hamstring anyway. So if he's convinced it's a hamstring pull and you're convinced it's a hamstring pull and you both start working on the hamstring, you're wasting your time, both of you and the client, right? So that's really where we're at. Okay, perfect. But where do we go then? So if we're already in sensation one of the low back gives us something during the squat, during the function, I think you already said it, Anna, where do I want your mind to focus? That's the actual question. Where do I want your mind to focus given what we've already just said? Go ahead, Anna, you want to repeat it?
Yeah, so for me, because I'm, at the earlier learning curve, I guess I would have to understand actually why he was experiencing all this pain, including the hamstring pain. So what I came up with, not that that's where the solution is, but, but for me, I kind of need to map it out like that.
So hang on one second though, before you start trailing down to the hamstrings though, what I want to emphasize for us is that you don't need to do that yet.
Right. I'm just explaining my train, like I understand that. So what I had written down was, so we know that we need we know that for squats, we need the psoas to get us into the flexion. Mm-hmm. And then we need the glute max to get us into extension. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's kind of the mechanics of that. So we also know that if his glute max are not working, not engaged, not whatever, then the synergist muscle, the hamstring, is going to come in to do the work. Mm-hmm. So we've got, and also if his glute max is not working, it means the psoas is doing, holy shit, I've got to do all of the work. I mean, these two are how opposite muscles, an agonist if the psoas is contracting, and then the antagonist is the glute max. So if the glute max is not doing any of the work, then the psoas is having to do one heck of a lot of work and is probably in contractile stress. And guess where the psoas attaches?
Okay. Okay, awesome. So I loved everything that you said. And one distinction. You said if the psoas needs to contract and the glute max is not contracting, then it puts more work on the psoas.
If the glute max isn't lengthening to allow the psoas to contract fully, then the psoas is actually not able to, do its full flexion.
Okay, but I thought I heard you say that glute max wasn't doing its job.
It is glute max that isn't doing its job, but we've got.
What's the job? What's the job? What's the job?
It's to extend. It's to get the guy back up from a squat.
Right. So that's where, right there is where I wanted to fine tune with you. It's not that the glute max wasn't lengthening. It's that
It
the glute
wasn't
max
strong enough to.
wasn't contracting to allow
Right.
psoas to lengthen. Because in order for a muscle to lengthen, the opposite guy has to contract.
Right. So it wasn't contracting. So the psoas couldn't, I get your distinction. The psoas couldn't possibly, lengthen to get him back up.
It's true. Yep. And that's from the phasic action. Got it. Great. Check. What about the intrinsic action of psoas? Was that working in that moment?
No, but I don't think he had intrinsic action working all the way up his, paraspinals.
Okay, but rather than making it too big of a picture,
Okay.
so we want to just state again, it's so easy to squirrel with the body because it's all connected. So we want to just train ourselves to stay local for a minute, get everything we need from that spot, and then look outside that spot if we need to, just while you're troubleshooting. Otherwise, you might miss something. The dots might not connect. So then how do you connect them to solve it? So just hang with us for a second in this moment. So we're in lumbar spine.
Yep.
How do we know that the psoas is not functioning intrinsically in the lumbar spine in this case study?
He has lower back pain.
How do we know before the pain comes though?
Because he's, Lori, do you want to take this? I was going to say it's got something to do with his squats, but.
Okay.
Well, it does. Like we talked about it. So here's the thing where so we know he wasn't in alignment, Gina, because of the discomfort in his back, right?
How
do we know that? You know what I mean?
Because of the curve, Lori, the curve. Remember, his buddy noticed the curve.
Oh, his buddy. No, okay. All I gotcha. So is that what it was? Is that what it was that you were like, oh, it might be?
Yeah. So obviously he's not, the lumbar curve isn't in place, right? Which means intrinsically, what holds the lumbar curve intrinsically in place?
There you go.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't, so it was I'm trying just to get back to, so it was his friend saying that.
Okay, well, hang on a second. Well, the question on the table is the psoas. How do we know that the psoas was not functioning intrinsically? What's the action of intrinsic muscles?
To stabilize.
Mm-mm.
Oh, to hold us upright.
Posture and balance.
Posture and balance.
Posture and balance.
Yep. And in posture, we include alignment. So posture / alignment and balance. Was he needing posture or balance to do squats? Was he needing posture or balance in his lumbar spine to do squats?
Posture.
Okay. Did he have sensation? Discomfort? Okay. And what did we say sensation was a symptom of or a response for? Two things. We started at the beginning of our talk today. It's either this or it's that.
It's either he's out of optimal alignment or he is not moving optimally.
Yep. It's either alignment or function or could be both.
That's why the lower back twinge.
You got it. Yep, Val. Yeah. Hey, Val. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're feeling much better. So we know that he had a sensation in his low back, which told us something, either alignment or functioning, was happening in his low back. He knew that too, instinctively. That's why he asked his friend, do you see anything? And his friend said, yeah, your posture doesn't look good. Or whatever layman speak his friend said, right? He wasn't a practitioner, but even to the layman's eye, we said this last week, he noticed like your back doesn't look good.
Yeah, his form was off.
His form was off. Yep, that's right. That's probably exactly what he said actually in the gym. His form was off, which we also can AKA posture, AKA alignment, right? Depends on the venue. So to his layman's eyes, your form is off in your low back. And now we already know we're either looking at alignment or function, possibly both. And we know that we're looking at the psoas primarily for hip flexion. Okay. And he's got 20 pounds of weight on his back. Did that make matters better or worse?
Worse.
Made it worse. So we now know that we're like, oh, okay, low back. I see you, lumbar spine. I see you not in alignment. So that means you can't possibly function fully. Remember, we said a muscle can only fully contract if the body's aligned. If the optimal alignment isn't there, you'll never get full contraction out of a muscle. It's not possible. So for the personal trainers in the room, I've said this over and over. I will continue. You get to know optimal alignment so that your clients can get maximum gains. Otherwise, they work really hard, even with 20-pound bags on their back, and they don't make stronger muscles out of that. They don't bulk. Alignment is the key. Okay, so we know there's a low back sensation. We've already honed in on that. Do you see how just in that one, what seems subtle, I'm not listening to the client. I'm not listening to the client tell me it's hamstring pull. La, 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 la. I will not listen. I will not listen. I will follow what the body has to say and the laws of the body first before I consider the hamstrings. Do you guys see the value there? I'm doing that? Rhonda, you good? Yep. Okay. So now we already have Soaz as a culprit. Dun, dun, dun. And the lumbar curve must be addressed. And then all of the synergists, of course, that go with it. And then antagonists too. Yes, beautiful. But then he tells us that the next day, his hamstrings, he was sure he pulled a hamstring. He's not sure how, because all he was doing were these weighted squats. Why do you guys think the body told him the next day that the hamstrings were mad?
Because his glute max was not working at all, or not functioning properly. I'm not going to say it wasn't working at all, but it just was not functioning properly, and it couldn't function properly because his lumbar curve is not aligned. So we don't have alignment, we don't have proper function. And the helper bees of the glutes are the hamstrings.
Yep, that's true. So Anna, how do we take it one step further of clarity for us? How do we know that if the lumbar curve is not balanced, that the glute max can't function? Because glute max isn't in the low back. So talk us through that.
Yeah, it's not in the low back, but it is this huge muscle that attaches on the back of the innominate.
Yeah.
But not just on the do you want me to hold up a picture?
I got Merv. It's the rump shaker.
Way easier. And and also down the back of the sacrum, right?
Well, it's not on the sacrum, but it attaches at the side of the sacrum. It's like here.
The side of the exactly.
Okay. Perfect. So why does this muscle not work? Because this alignment is off in this curve.
Well, we also have a QL in there, but we'll ignore the QL.
Don't. Yeah.
Okay,
don't.
I'm ignoring it. I'm ignoring it. I'm ignoring it. God,
you're onto something. You're onto something, and my reason for pressing in is because I want you to really understand the function in your mind, so you can see how this affects that, leads to that, so that you know what to do in your resolve of it.
Yeah.
So how does, you said affirmatively, glute max was not working. It put all kinds of strain and havoc on the hamstrings. But how was glute max not functioning? Based on what do you know? So you don't want to just make arbitrary complaints about a muscle, right? We want to give them a chance to win.
Like my favorite muscle too in the whole world.
Yeah. So how do we know? You're correct. And how do you know that? Functionally walk through it.
Well, I wanted to go to the fact that, he had the hamstring pain, and I know that the hamstring helps the glute max, but your question is, how does it translate to pain in the lower back? So
no. The question is, how do you know that glute max wasn't working? Because you said affirmatively, glute max was not functioning, which put strain on the hamstrings. How do you know the glute max wasn't functioning?
I would think that I might have seen it in his inability to extend properly out of a squat.
Extend what?
Extend out of it, like extend. Extend, is that the right term for the hip? Yeah.
So you think his hip extension was off?
Yeah.
And you think you would have to be there to see that to know for sure?
No, I could get him easily to just step back, you know, with that leg, and, you know, press the toes on the ground, and I heel up, and I could feel his glute max.
But that's not the position he was in when he was at the workout, though.
Right.
So how do you know in that workout, in that moment of squats, that his glutes weren't firing fully? You do know.
I do know.
Yeah, but how do you know? He's in a squat. He's
My
flexing.
hand was on his rump. No.
No, you don't even have to be in the room. You guys can see it. You can be like, oh, bing, bing, bing. This is how this all fires or doesn't fire. Based on what would it make it impossible for his glute max to contract fully? Based on what
he's
you
got
already
the lumbar curve.
The alignment of his spine.
Yeah, exactly.
So how does the alignment? God, great.
Yes,
I know, Anna. We both went like this at the same time. Yes.
So how does the alignment of his spine, or misalignment of his spine even, prevent glute max from firing? Based on what specifically? Just be kindergarten language. Tell me.
Go, Lori.
Hold on. What was
kindergarten language, Lori?
No, I know. I was looking at my
How?
notes and I missed the question. So, in kindergarten language, we are.
Tell me how the glute max isn't firing because the lumbar is out of alignment. Here's what happens a lot, guys. I'm just pausing us here. You guys who are working through case studies and complex stuff, I love it. When you get general and vague, I don't know that you can actually solve the problem. So I'm pushing in here. So you're feeling me push that.
So I'm anxious to find out how in the hell do you get there?
I know,
Okay.
right? It's probably.
So how do you know glute max isn't firing? Based on he's in a squat, his lumbar curve is, Soaz was shortened, Rhonda said. Great. How does Soaz shortened, lumbar curve not in neutral alignment, and the phasic action being flexion and extension of the hip, how does that mean that the glute max wasn't firing fully? You're muted, Anna.
Visually, he wouldn't be able to come into, a full extension.
Of what? Extension of what?
Of the hip.
Spine?
Of the hip.
Of the hip.
Because
does it have to do with his pelvis? Yeah, because his pelvis, because his sit bones would be forward.
Exactly.
It's in a tilt. It's in a tilt.
Yeah.
Yep. So in most arenas, we would say that it's a posterior tilt. In Schatz's method, we know that its apex is on the index. Right? So if his lumbar curve is rounded this way, his pelvis has to follow, not anterior, posterior, Rhonda. Anterior tilt would be belly button forward, tail feathers back. Posterior tilt is the opposite. So if his lumbar is posterior, so is his pelvis posterior. And in that position, let me just grab a leg here. In that position, I don't know, a different leg.
So many parts.
He's like a jigsaw puzzle on the floor, this guy. I love him. Okay. So I can't do a posterior tilt on him because he's bolted, obviously. So just mind the visual. But if this is neutral for the hip, and flexion and extension means glute max. If the pelvis starts here, obviously it would be because the lumbar curve, and then the pelvis starts here. There's not an ability.
There's nowhere to go. Yeah.
Nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go.
I used to confuse that because I'd say, well, actually, there's more hip extension. Because look at that angle now. Look at that angle between the ilium and the femur. There's more hip extension, but not in this joint. There's no neutrality in the joint. The joints must be neutral for muscles to fully contract. Not just distort their position and then try to get them to contract there. It doesn't work like that. And it's not just the hip joint that's out of alignment. It's also the lumbar curve out of alignment, which, as you said earlier, Rhonda, the muscles in the low back all attach here as well. Paraspinals all attach here as well. So now we've got all kinds of muscles that aren't aligned to do their job, basically. So it's not only this angle here with a posterior tilt and the head of the femur, it's what it's doing to all the muscles from L1 all the way down to the hip socket. But none of them are.
So I'm just going to step back for a second because you said, how do we know that the glute max is not working?
Yeah, you
That was
told us the glute max is not firing. It's putting all this pressure on the hamstrings.
Right.
And my question back to you was, how do you know that?
Right. So because we know he's got a lumbar curve, and so therefore his pelvis is not properly aligned.
It's posteriorly tilted. Apex is on the index.
Yeah. And so anytime that happens, you can't get proper extension of the hip.
You can extend the hip, but you can't get full contraction of glute max from that position.
But you can't even really totally extend the hip, can you, if the glute max is not fully working?
Sure, you can.
He
Somebody
did.
else does the job.
Yeah, he did. That's why, right? He got up and he moved around. Like we, our bodies are lovely in that way. Yeah. It didn't lock him and he, I can't move. Yeah.
Yeah, and the way you would know that, Anna, so if you stood up right now, just stand up, and then posteriorly tilt your pelvis, you're in extension.
Yep. And I can still move.
Yeah, I can still move, but I'm feeling a hinge.
Of course you are. Of course you are, because you're not aligned, so you can't be properly functioning.
Right. I think that's what I meant by not full extension. I mean, people walk like this, right? Like,
sure.
Yeah, they're extended. They're just compensating.
Right? So can you summarize it for us in good words?
Oh, you're going to get to summarize it, Anna.
Summarize what?
I tried.
She tried to sneak it in there. Anna, summarize what? Summarize what? What part? You're muted.
So how do we know the glute max is not working based on the fact that the lumbar is curved? So what I wrote down is he can't extend the hip fully, but the reason that we know glute max is not working, see, this is where, like, visually, how do you know that? Like, okay, we know the lumbar curve is not in its proper place, and what causes that? So we've got a posterior tilt of the pelvis. And if we have a posterior tilt of the pelvis, then that means that a whole bunch of muscles cannot work properly. And for sure, the glute max cannot work properly because of how much geography it takes up on that back pelvis.
Okay, do this. So I said a whole bunch of other muscles and I got colorful, and so that could have easily squirreled you. Stand up again if you want to workshop this out in your own body. So just stand up again. So you're in hip extension and knee extension and lumbar extension, correct? I'm assuming. Yeah. Okay, great. So now all I want you to do is posteriorly tilt your pelvis. So send your pubic bone forward, apex is forward. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Go back. Sorry, go back. We have to do it before and after or you won't get it. So just neutral extension of the hips, lumbar spine, and knees. You're just standing. Great. Take your hands to your glute max and do a little rump shaker check. Should be a little bit like moderate amount of tone there. You shouldn't be holding a dime between your cheeks. That's not glute max anyway, and you shouldn't do that while you're standing. But there should be some firmness there, something happening because you are in extension of the hip, not actively, but you're standing. Okay, great. Now take your hands down. Take your hands down. Send your pubic bone forward and posteriorly tilt your pelvis. Yep. Great. Make sure you're not squeezing a dime between your butt cheeks. And now go back for a glute max check again. Stronger or weaker? Zero glute max. That's how you know, Anna, you can be in hip extension. You can be in knee extension. But without an aligned pelvis, you can't have full engagement of glute max. It went away just in standing. You're not even in function yet. That's how you know.
The issue.
That was good.
That's how you know. What, Val?
Especially, it was especially weaker down towards the ischial, the lower fibers.
Sure. Yep. And weighted and hypermobile, blah, blah. Yeah, exactly. So
now how does the weight and how does the hypermobility and weight add to this equation?
Oh my gosh, such a great question. I will ask you one back to answer it for you. What does hypermobility mean for alignment in general? What does hypermobility mean to alignment?
And I should know this with all the people I work with.
Well, that's all right. Don't judge. Just try to find the answer. There's a common connection, like a body law almost, that we want our brains to go to. Hypermobility means this about alignment.
Yeah.
I think it has a harder time holding that alignment
More
steady.
strength. It needs more strength.
You got it. It's got a harder
Okay.
time holding the alignment. So
Yeah.
don't go yet into the fix. Just go into what does it mean first.
So it
if
needs more strength. Would that be the right wording for this?
not yet, not yet.
Okay.
Like I just said to Lori, yep. So all we know, so stay in the step we're in.
Okay.
Hypermobile frames have a harder time being in alignment. In general, sitting in a chair, breathing the air, they have a harder time being in alignment. As soon as you move them, harder time being in alignment for all constitutions, harder for hypermobile though. And as soon as you're out of alignment and you add weight,
Right.
now you're not in alignment bearing weight with dysfunction happening mechanically. Did you get it, Val?
No, I'm writing.
Okay. Okay.
So when out of alignment, adding weight, it makes it that much more difficult.
Out of
Because it has to
alignment.
fight. Right. Because if it's out of alignment, has to fight even without being out of alignment. If you've got weight on, added weight to that, more so than what it's used to. So it's having to fight more just to stay in alignment. So adding added strength gives it a greater burden.
Exactly. So
Okay.
constitution aside, more weight requires more muscle power. In a hypermobile constitution, and in all constitutions, you need to be aligned for muscle power. In a hypermobile constitution, harder to be aligned to be able to have muscle power that you're now weight bearing and requiring more muscle power for. Did you get the math, Val?
I think so.
Say that again, because I have a hypermobile client.
Okay, so just here's what we do. This is part of our thinking, right? We're just going to go with what we know about the body and then go with what else we know about the body and then stack it from there. Don't try to go like, oh, I have this client. What do I do? And I didn't hear you say that, Anna, but I'm pausing us. Is this how you think it through? What we know about weight bearing is it requires more muscle power in general, across the board. Weight bearing requires more muscle power. We also know that in order to have full muscle power, we must be in alignment. We just talked about it with glute max standing. So more weight bearing requires more muscle power. And in order to have full muscle power, I've got to be in alignment. So now we're back to alignment to bear weight. And in a hypermobile constitution, just getting into that alignment is already harder. Which would make weight bearing definitely precarious on any frame out of alignment, much worse on a hypermobile frame out of alignment. Yeah, it was an excellent question. Really important, like crux of info there.
So in the meantime, Soaz is going in trying to do the job or overcompensate. And
well, we
for
know
lack
that
of a better word, I must say
know
it
that,
seizes up.
Well,
because it's not in alignment either.
It's not in alignment, so it can't do intrinsic strength. So now we've got a problem with the alignment. We already have a problem with the alignment because he's hypermobile. Now we have a problem with the alignment because of his position, because his chosen alignment, rounded back. And we know that in order for this function to happen, Soaz has to do the work because it's mainly hip flexion. But he's already compromised in his intrinsic action. He's definitely going to be compromised in his phasic action. And he can't fully lengthen because glute max on the other side of the lever is not contracting. If he can't fully lengthen, he can't fully contract, and he needs to fully contract. We need power in that muscle that is not available to that muscle because of A, the alignment in the lumbar and pelvis, and the lack of strength on the other side of the lever. Soaz is getting pummeled.
So it does not have power either.
Say it again, Val.
When you say it's being pummeled, it's because physically it's out of alignment as well as intrinsically. So it can't do its job properly.
Yep. And it has no help from the other side of the lever either. And it's got 20 pounds of weight more than the body weight. That's what I meant by pummeled. It's like every way you could punish the Soaz was happening in that moment. Out of alignment would have been plenty. Not a full functioning lever, either because of strength discrepancies or just alignment, which would prevent the lever, would have also been plenty. 20 pounds of weight on top of that, more than plenty. Go ahead, Rhonda.
So I didn't know in the beginning that there was a posterior pelvic tilt in this scenario. But I'm curious now, what if it was an anterior tilt as opposed to a posterior tilt?
Yeah, it would change all
Would
the
it
symptoms.
then involve the quads as opposed to the hamstrings?
Well, we don't know, because when things go wrong, there's no rule book on how that happens, but we know that there would have been some symptom for sure.
Okay.
Because the same rules apply. The lumbar spine wouldn't have been in alignment. All the muscles on the levers that were needing to work couldn't function fully on both sides of the lever. What that would have done for symptoms is a crapshoot, but we know that the same problem solving to get to the solution is needed. Yeah, good. Anna, did you have a question before too?
Yeah, I did. Because I'm back to like the visual.
Okay.
So if he can't fully lengthen,
what? Lengthen what?
if the psoas can't fully lengthen, then it can't fully contract, and it can't fully lengthen because the glute max is not able to fully contract, therefore impinging on the lever action of the psoas.
And because of the lumbar curve. So it's in, the psoas
Right.
starts on the slack.
Right.
Okay.
Psoas starts in the slack. So if I was if I was in the gym with him, that's important that the psoas starts on the slack. Okay. But if I'm in the gym with him and I can see, other than seeing the lumbar curve, would I also see that he wasn't able to fully extend his hip? Or would I not see that because the hamstring has now kicked in to do the glute max job, thereby allowing the psoas to extend fully?
Well, I don't know the answer because we weren't there, but the way I'm salved by the not knowing for sure is it doesn't matter because Schatz's method is sacrum centric. So we go sacrum up all 4 curves. And if one of the curves is off, they're all off. That's all I need to know.
Right. But he had, I mean, you know, the clients come in, you've said to us, we have to validate the client's pain, right? When they come in, I mean, we don't have to cater to it, but we have to acknowledge it, you know, validate it. So wouldn't we want to explain, oh, that isn't the cause of it, but you're feeling that pain because it was your hamstrings working instead of the glute max. I guess I'm still trying to figure out in my own brain how we got down to the hamstring being in pain.
We didn't get there yet.
Oh.
Yeah, we didn't get there yet. But just like I answered to Rhonda, if it's this misalignment in function or that misalignment in function, would the symptoms be different? All we need to say to the client is because you were out of alignment, the function couldn't be optimal, and that's what caused the problem. And because I, practitioner, know that 90% of the pain of the body is referred from somewhere else, I'm going to look for a minute before I just assume it's the hamstrings. Because we both want the problem to be solved, right? And they're like, yeah, sure. What do you need? How many questions?
The problem is you know what to say.
It's not a problem. It's that you're working on messaging. It's also part of our track and the shots method. That's why I've talked to you guys about messaging from the beginning. Absolutely. But you got to know what to message though, too. So you need to know the alignment in order to be able to message. And they both come hand in hand, and you're there. You're working on it, Anna. That's why it's exactly why we're here. Okay, perfect. So we're starting to get clues about why the hamstring took such a brunt, right? Why the hamstring complained the next day. And you, I think, even named it, Anna. So what do we think so far? We haven't touched him yet. We're just in the intake. He's telling us what he did, right? What do we think might so far be the cause of his hamstring screaming the next day? Based on what?
Everything else isn't working, so it's trying to take over.
Yeah, Soaz.
Yeah, specifically what's not working.
The glute max.
Soaz, glute,
inhibition.
multifidi.
Well, so hold on a second. So what we don't want to do is just rattle off an anatomy book to our clients or ourselves.
right.
We want to be as streamlined as possible. So far, what we've talked about is we know that the hamstrings are taking the load for what specifically?
Glute max.
Glute max, which is in trouble because of what?
The psoas and glutes not working properly. Well, the core, the intrinsic muscles aren't. He's not properly stabilized.
Because why?
He was out of alignment.
Alignment. There you go.
Mhm.
Yep. Alignment, strength, function. That's our formula, right? So
Right.
he's not in alignment.
And no strength in the glutes. So the hamstrings are trying to do everybody's job.
Not everybody's. The hamstrings are doing what the glute max needs to be doing.
Okay.
The hamstrings need to do extension of the hip,
Correct.
which is super tricky in this position. Without the help of glute max, because lumbar spine, because 20 pounds of weight, because of the wonderful things he does. Yeah. So the hamstrings are not like, whoa, what the freak? The next day. And he thinks he's got a hamstring pull. And what do we do for hamstring pulls typically? What do people
stretch them?
Yay! What are we supposed to do for tightness in the body? Yeah.
Contracted.
Rarely ever do
I
we
use
stretch.
smart and it'll make it do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Get it back. Get him back online.
Right. Get him back online. And left to his own devices for 10 days, he's at home stretching the bejesus out of his hamstrings that are already like, no. Please, I beg of you. Right. So he's kind of irritating it maybe, or maybe not getting full stretch. Either way, it didn't help because we know that stretching only helps one of the 4 types of tightness. And then 10 days later, it moves into his low back. And because he's a regular client, he knows, yeah, I probably shouldn't be having that. Gina would have my head if I don't come get this fixed. And even when okay, go ahead, Val.
So would the glutes be in turgor and psoas would be in tensile along with the paraspinals? At this point, would glute max be considered turgid?
No.
Because it's not 20, well, it wouldn't have been off, well, at that point, 24 hours off, maybe. I don't know.
Well, atrophy.
Just curious on that.
So atrophy begins in 24 hours. Turgor doesn't have a delayed onset necessarily. It's usually in response to alignment. Soaz, though, would not be under tensile stress, Val. What would Soaz be under?
Contractile.
Contractile stress.
So Val, I still don't have, I'm with you on not having an answer on what the glute max, but I think we've got the hamstrings and tensile stress. We've got the psoas and contractile stress. So the glute max are in anybody?
Well, why
she
do you
said
think
contract, but I don't see how they're in
no, I said hamstrings and tensile. No. Aren't they
there's something here in tensile, but it's not hamstrings. What is it?
Paraspinals.
How do we know paraspinals are in tensile stress?
Because they were underweight and already in a stretched out
a misalignment.
Form.
Yep. They're in a lengthened position. They're in a lengthened position bearing weight. That is the definition of tensile.
So they weren't able to contract and help support the body. In the meantime, psoas is in slack. So is that one in turgor?
No.
Would it also be tensile? But
How
it's
would the
not
psoas-
lengthened. It would
They're
be
not lengthened
contractile.
though.
It
I
would be
think
contractile.
Yeah, for the psoas.
Yeah, I think the psoas is in contractile stress.
Okay.
the psoas is in contractile stress to start because it can't lengthen, and
You
it's
have long and then short on the other side.
let me give this to you, please. So
Okay.
psoas is in contractile stress at the start because it's shortened and bearing weight, and then it's being asked to contract to do the function. And once that happens over and over and over again, then it becomes turgid. So at first it's just under contractile stress. It can't lengthen. And all of that contractile stress, weight bearing. Then the psoas was like, I got to hold up the whole show here. And it just does that, like locking that stone that we talked about last week in group training. It just doubles down on itself something's got to hold up the body now. It's not the paraspinals. It's not
so
the
it's
glute
still
max.
considered contractile, but overstressed contractile.
It starts in contractile and ends up in turgor.
Okay. The whole turgor word is a whole new. Tensile comes easier, but okay.
But I just want to be clear, Valerie. So it's the psoas that started in contractile stress at the beginning, because
no. Actually, what started was the lumbar paraspinals in tensile because they were lengthened and weight bearing.
Right.
Psoas started in slack.
Oh.
Remember we said the psoas was on the slack because the lumbar curve was reversed.
Right.
Fibers of the paraspinals got shorter, but not contracted yet.
Gina, as part of that issue with what you were saying, we have to expand to contract. And since it tried to contract within the contraction, part of the issue.
There you go.
Okay.
Contract within the contraction.
Yeah, that's what went from contractile stress to turgor. It started to contract inside the contraction and wasn't able to lengthen. No help from the paraspinals, no help from glute max.
So it's like I can't do anything.
We're talking about the psoas here, right?
Yeah. I'm stuck and I can't move.
Kind of.
I'm stuck and I can't move. And listen to this. Yes, exactly. I'm stuck and I can't move, and you have me in perpetual phasic action. But I'm stuck and I can't move. Equals turgor. That's how the turgor got formed.
So did he walk in all hunched over, Gina, when he came in your office?
No, he's a long, lengthy guy with mediocre posture.
Okay.
He's hypermobile, so he doesn't come like a hunchback.
Yeah.
You know, he comes in kind of lanky and moving parts ish.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna press this because I'm confused. We've got 1 minute.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, time.
So the psoas started in a slack, you said. And we know this because of the lumbar curve.
Correct.
Okay. Then it's being asked to move to contract, being asked to contract in order to do its function. And then it's bearing weight. And so then it gets frozen into the contraction. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. So it's
and what the hell is glute max doing?
Where's
nothing?
It's hanging out.
Yeah, he's just hanging out. Okay, so here's the length of psoas. Oh, I can maybe do it on Murph, actually. This might be better visual for you. Okay, so for Murph, I know. So here's the length of psoas, almost exact, right? So because he's in a lumbar curve, a reverse lumbar curve, right? The lumbar curve is going this way.
Oh, that's the slack.
These muscles lengthen. This muscle slightly short. It's called slack. It's not contracted. It's just sort of like loosey-goosey-ish, meaning the insertion moves towards the origin, but not because it's contracting.
It's just not engaging. It's just there.
It's not engaging. It's just shorter.
Well, it's the posterior tilt that's allowing that to get to slack, right?
Well, it's
It's the lumbar curve,
paraspinals.
and then it's the lengthening of the paraspinals. These lengthen, these shorten. That's lever. These lengthen, these shorten. Then the posterior tilt held it there, held the psoas there. And now we're going to ask it to contract on the way down. Hip flexion, which means he's got to contract, but he's not even lengthened to contract. He's shortened. Go ahead and contract. And now I want you to extend as I come up from the squat, but you can't fully extend because these guys won't let you and these guys won't let you.
Hence
So you
the
can't
twinge.
You can't fully extend, but I need you to contract, but you're already in a shortened position. You're contracting inside the shortening and bearing weight. And that is why it's in his low back or in his torso area and not in his hamstrings. But the hamstrings do have a response, and they did take a beating too. But we would have missed it. If you're manual or movement practitioners and you were going to lengthen his hamstrings and then lengthen his quads to lengthen his hamstrings, you would have missed it. And he would have left.
Wow.
I know,
now,
right?
What did you do to treat him?
Yeah, we still have more to go on this. We have another cover. But the good news is that I feel like you have more information now on the function, which is really important. You gotta, like, I want you to have that. Like, what is actually happening and what does that mean for those tissues and how would they respond to that? So you guys get to decide. What would you do given this information? Maybe it's the same as that you came into today's training with. Maybe you're going to update your treatment plan notes a little bit, given this new information. But we will absolutely cover it the next time we meet, which will be in 2 weeks, my loves, because I am in a training of my own next Tuesday. So I will not be here on Tuesday. So this case study. Val's like, I can't take it.
Fix the microcurrent on him.
Oh, poor Val.
You guys are hilarious. I love that you're so into it. I'm here for it. My goodness, every week. We're gonna come back to this case study and wrap up from here. Okay, maybe we'll wrap it up next time. I don't see why we wouldn't, unless we uncover lots of new knowings, which is exactly also why we're here. The goal isn't just to get to the journey. The goal is what you learn getting to the journey's end, so that you can apply it to all the other work that you're doing. So I am loving what you guys are doing. I'm so happy that you're into it. I'm loving it too. I'm totally into it. I will be back here with you guys in 2 weeks. If you know anybody else who wasn't here today and you want to share the link with them so that they can get caught up so we can have a full conversation with everybody on board in 2 weeks, that would be awesome. And thank you for sharing the training with any other practitioner that you think would benefit from having this knowledge. I really appreciate sharing the love. So until I see you next time, continue to do great work in the world. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye for now.
I left you a thing, Gina. Oh, okay. I left you a thing on the board.
Yeah, I answered you, Val.
Oh, I came in here shortly thereafter.
Perfect.
So
yeah, it was so good. I love
that
it.
I was impressed. So
me too. I'm happy for you.
Yes.
Way to use it. Way to use it. All right, dolls. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Happy Thanksgiving.